So I'm going to be completely honest with all of you in sharing that I debated whether or not to actually produce this very video for two reasons. One, I feel like without a ton of portfolio moves actually being made on a week-to-week basis, perhaps it's not worth it. And two, because I don't have an exact monthly dividend income total just yet without actually closing out the month in November. But ultimately, this is just about showing you through my investment journey, keeping you up to speed with my portfolio, and most importantly, during weeks where, say, not a whole lot happened, letting you know that this is in fact the real deal of investing. At times, it looks a whole lot like nothing. After all, it's said that if you're having fun investing, you are likely doing it wrong. Therefore, here I am with my portfolio update. So clicking into Gitcoin, my portfolio tracker, you're going to see that on the week, my portfolio performed well, up over 1%, and clicking to the monthly view, up over 3%, bringing my entire portfolio value to $232,197. And while I didn't do too much this past week in terms of buying, aside from just one more share worth of the S&P 500 through Vanguard's VOO, to keep up my dollar cost averaging strategy, I did in fact receive dividends throughout the month of November that I wanted to go ahead and share with all of you. Then come the end of the video, I'm actually going to use an estimated distribution payout amount for what hasn't yet come through from my Vanguard settlement fund to total out the month of November. But before I cover the stocks that paid me out a dividend, as we always do on these monthly or weekly updates rather, I'm going to quickly run through my portfolio so you know exactly what we're working with. So clicking back into Gitcoin, we're going to see that my portfolio is currently weighted heavier in ETFs at roughly 44.9% before I spread into individual stocks at 43% of my portfolio, and this cash position here, which is key, coming in over $26,000 or almost 12% worth of my portfolio. Now, that is there for my dollar cost averaging strategy or any major opportunities that come about, but as you're going to see at the end of the video, it is worth it in fact to have money in a settlement fund as long as that settlement fund is going to pay you more than your bank. Moving right along into our sector breakdown, not a lot has changed here, with tech still dominating my portfolio at over 51% of my holdings, followed by other, which we're going to skip over at this point in time. Then we're going to have consumer discretionary coming in at 10% of my portfolio, healthcare as a growing sector in my portfolio now coming in at 9.3%, before I get into industrials at 5%, as well as financials at 3.14%, real estate at 2.91%, consumer staples at 2.9% as well, before I get into slivers of the energy sector, as well as utilities and the material sectors, which all break down further into positions like Vanguard's S&P fund, or VOO, coming in to dominate the portfolio at 23%, followed by Vanguard's tech ETF at 13% of my portfolio. My first and largest individual stock here with Apple at 11.9% of my portfolio, before we tap into the cash position here, again at around 12%, and then we get into Alphabet at 9.7% of my portfolio, before tapping into the entire market with the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund at just over 8%. Then we have United Health at 5.7%, Visa at a much lower 3.4% of my portfolio, followed by Tesla at 3%, Realty Income at 2.9%, and Amazon at 2.6%, before we wrap it all up with Lockheed Martin at 2.4% and the McDonald's and Coca-Cola both under 1%. As you all likely know by now, my big plan is actually to continue to trim down my portfolio, reallocate a lot of capital into my stocks in focus for 2025, so stay tuned for all of that. If this past week wasn't shortened by the holiday, it would have been done already. But in more exciting news, while my portfolio is quite small, it still delivers on some dividend firepower. That's what I want to run through now. And interestingly enough, the first dividend stock that actually paid me out a dividend this past month, well, I don't even own at this point anymore because I sold out of the position, but it came in from Darden Restaurants, ticker symbol DRI, which I own for quite some time since the troubles back in 2020, as a restaurant operator managing some of the most popular restaurant brands in the United States, from the Olive Garden to Longhorn Steakhouse, Eddie V's, and the Capitol Grill, just to name a few. Now, since then, the stock not only made a major comeback, but continues to prove itself. Currently, it is up by almost 8% this year alone, and clicking to the 5-year view, you can see exactly what I was talking about, now up by over 47%. Now, scrolling down, you can see that it has a healthy income statement as well as plenty of health on the balance sheet, thus shoring up any confidence for me to actually enjoy this investment in a portfolio. As for me, I ended up selling out of the position, like I said not too long ago, to reallocate the capital elsewhere and focus on more of my stocks and focus. But I still received $7.90 from a handful of shares that I used to own, thanks to the dividend yield coming in at 3.2%. Now, I want to also say with a payout ratio here of just 60%, 3-year dividend streak, despite all the market mayhem, and a high growth rate here of 23%, at the right buy-in, it may be worth your consideration. However, moving along here, I received another dividend from Apple this past month. It is a Mag 7 player that never fails to amaze me, and in this sense, it doesn't seem to even lose any steam. Clicking into their stock chart, we can see that Apple is up on the year by over 26%, and clicking to that 5-year chart, up by over 251%. As for me, I'm simply holding on to my 117 shares, which allowed me to receive $29.45, all thanks to that Apple dividend yield at 0.43%. Then finally, as for my last individual dividend stock payment, I received a dividend from my monthly Payer Realty Income, which is personally my real estate investment trust of choice. And actually, one of the only REITs that I would really encourage any and all investors to look into if you are in fact looking for monthly cash flow. It's wide moat thanks to its vast 15,000 property portfolio spanning across the US and outside of the US, with a client base topping 1,000 clients. I mean, can't be rocked much. And rather recently, the Fed shared that it will not be progressing with interest rate cuts, which made the stock slide from $64 per share down to about $58 per share, which is what we see now. But clicking to the 5-year chart, you're going to see the opportunity is all about the right buy-in price and requires the right economic conditions for it to flourish. And in this case, that's lower interest rates. Scrolling down, only good metrics to be found here with their income statement and, of course, the balance sheet, with assets even increasing rather recently by roughly 16% to $57 billion in assets to just $24 billion in liabilities. Now, as for me, I currently own 114 shares worth of realty income that allowed me to receive $30.29, thanks to that dividend yield coming in at 5.42%. Now, that all brings me to a dividend income total, at least from individual stocks, to $67.64. But now remember, for just having that large chunk of change, that $26,000 sitting in my settlement fund with Vanguard, well, I'm expected to receive another dividend distribution, estimated now around $100. So roughly $167.64 will be received in total dividend income this November. And if we click into my dividend income tracker, here's what I want to show you. We're going to discover that I am November over November doing very well, performing right on par, better and better. Now, I'm also sitting on a new year-to-date total of $2,550 roughly, and bringing in roughly $212 per month in dividend income, which is not too shabby considering the size of my portfolio and my current investment strategy. But with that, I now want to know just how much dividend income you brought in during the month of November. So definitely go ahead and let me know down there in the comments. Tune in right here for my latest dividend investing talk with Ryan Williams. Totally unscripted, worth your watch. Be sure you're subscribed to this channel. And with all of that, I will catch you in the next one.